In today's show, we continue our season review series, talking all things Sterling Scoot Henderson. We'll look back at what the Blazers' young point guard did in year 2, and then dare to look ahead to what's next. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richmond. You listen to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making this show your first listen, coming at you each and every weekday, Monday through Friday. So make it a part of your daily routine. Make it your first listen. Tell your friends to do the same. It's Locked On Blazers, your team every day. In today's program, we're continuing our season review series, talking all things Sterling Scoot Henderson. We will get into what he did in his second season. We will hear from Michael from the past and see what my predictions were for young Scooter heading into year 2, back when I recorded my season preview in September, to see where Scoot landed. And then we'll kind of look ahead to what's next for Scoot on the horizon, and my sort of view on what his path should be and might be for your Portland Trailblazers. Let's start by looking back a little bit. Scoot appeared in 66 games, played 26.7 minutes a night, and averaged 12.7 points, 3 boards, and 5.1 assists, shot 41.9% from the floor, including 35.4% from 3 and 76.7%, from the free throw line. In a somewhat baffling turn of events, he only started 10 of 66 games. And in terms of just per minute numbers, Scoot's points, rebounds, and assists per game were all down, lower than his legitimately very underwhelming rookie campaign. But you're not a doofus. You know that the per game numbers are not the indicator of Scoot's progress, because he was, without a shadow of a doubt, improved in year 2 than compared to year 1. Certainly the bar was pretty low. Scoot struggled as a rookie, no doubt about it. He closed the season strong, but he closed the season strong in like that weird time of year where it's like, I don't know, and the Blazers were still losing those games. And he started year 2 pretty bumpy, right? The beginning of this season was also relatively rough. And so, like, there was a time in mid-December when on this very podcast, I was pretty worried about Scoot Henderson. Not that he was like, to be totally honest, there was a time in early in the season where I was like, hey, is Scoot Henderson going to be an NBA player? Like, he's obviously going to, I would assume he'll get a second contract, but it's like, is he going to be a positive NBA player at any points? Like, is this going to be a thing that you like, oh yeah, he helps, or is this, but he got better and got better in a hurry. And there was a stretch, in January when he was legitimately good. Overall though, he shot better inside the arc on 2s. He shot better outside the arc on 3s significantly. He cut down on his league-leading turnover rate. And as a rookie, he led the NBA in turnovers per 100 possessions at a whopping 5.9 per 100. To simply just a guy who turns the ball over a lot. He stopped. He was no longer the outlier crazy turnover machine, and merely just someone who turns the ball over a little bit more than you would like. And he improved as a rookie. He was really, really rough on defense, and I think he made big strides on that end in year 2. I think it would be overstating to say that Scoot turned into a plus defender. I think there's maybe there's a little momentum in talking about Scoot. It's like, he's so good on defense now. I don't think that. I think he was probably a negative defender overall, and the sort of on-off split suggests that he didn't help the Blazers defense very much when he was on the court. But I do think he very clearly made strides. He very clearly made positive strides in that direction, just like watching him. His off-ball attentiveness, I think a place where Scoot Henderson might even end up being pretty good is as a playmaker, as like a guy who gets steals, as a theft artist. He's got good hands. He's strong. He's got good instincts there, and when the ball's, when the guy's right in front of him, he can use his strength and his quickness and his long arms and big hands to become a defensive playmaker. He can probably be a little better in the passing lanes. And I do think he improved as an off-ball defender a significant amount. I still think he's pretty bad on defense, like on the whole, but he made strides. And that's what you want to see young players do. Like, you want to see them get better. And I think he certainly did. And like, you know, I'm being a little harsh here. So, like, jokes aside, the Blazers were better when Scoot played. Like, that is a fact. They outscored their opponents by 4.6 per 100 possessions when he was on the court. They won his minutes all season long. On the whole, they won his minutes. You can't say that about a lot of dudes on the team, right? And I'm not someone who believes like this is those are on-off numbers per cleaning the glass. I'm not someone who believes super strongly in these on-off numbers as like, well, he's clearly good, right? Like, or he's like, I don't want to extrapolate too far, but like, it is factually true they won his minutes, and absolutely his most positive impacts came on offense. The Blazers were 6.9 points per 100 possessions better with Scoot in the game than on the bench. They were 7 points better on offense. They outscored their opponents by 7 points per 100 possessions better on offense when he played versus when he sat. Their offense was better, not outscored their opponents. Their offense was 7 points better when he was in the game versus when he sat. Like, Scoot helped. And there was a stretch in January, kind of just before the Blazers got rolling, and into that stretch where they got rolling in mid-January into mid-February, where Scoot was like helpful and like just like a straight up like positive impact every time he played. It really started he had 39 against Brooklyn in a loss and hit 8 threes. And it was like, that was a game where he played well and shot it extremely well, but the Blazers lost at home to the Nets. And it was like, okay, that's not an ideal game. And it wasn't like super close at the end either. It was like, okay, and that was the stretch of their season when they were still kind of, it felt a little rocky for them, right? And then they got rolling shortly thereafter. Maybe a week later, the Blazers, like, their season like really turned around, and they wouldn't have lost to the Nets in after that. Like, when they kind of once they figured it out, the exact type of game they would have won is like playing the Nets at home, right? They just took care of all those like TCB games against bad teams. They won down the stretch of the season. That was their secret sauce. But from that stretch on, that 39-point outburst against Brooklyn, and the 15 games that follow. So that's 16 games heading into the All-Star break. Scoot averaged 15 points, 15.3 points, 3.3 boards, 5.8 assists, and shot 49% from the floor, 45% from three on 5 attempts a game, and 83% from the free throw line. So, like, coming mostly off the bench, he started 4 of those 16 games, but like 15 and 6 on, you know, just shy of 50, but 49, 45, 83 splits, taking 5 threes a game. Like, that's a good basketball player, you know. And the Blazers again won his minutes. They were significantly better with him on the court during those minutes. They had a positive net rating during that 16-game stretch with Scoot on the court. At one point, it was hovering in the double digits net, like positive net, but they kind of crashed out at the end of heading into the All-Star break, and it didn't stay that high. Like, that stretch. And when that was the Blazers playing their best basketball, at least the most successful basketball, coincided with Scoot playing really darn well. He had 30 in an OT loss to the Knicks, including 18 in the fourth quarter and the final 8 points of regulation to push that game to OT during that same stretch. And then, like, he was... that was after the All-Star break. He had that 30-point game against the Knicks, 18 in the fourth quarter and the final 8 of regulation to push that game to OT, and they lost at the buzzer. And then his season eventually ended. Year 2 for Scoot Henderson on March 27th, actually, I guess the following day, but he got hit in the chin. He was crashing the offensive glass, and Domantas Sabonis kind of reached back to box him out, and he caught Scoot in the chin. At the time, seems like a relatively innocuous play. Scoot played for a few more minutes in that game, and then he was eventually placed in the concussion protocol and did not return, missed the final 8 games of the regular season, the final 2 weeks of the regular season. I think Scoot undoubtedly took a step forward this year. Undoubtedly, it is impossible. I was straight up. It's impossible to argue, and I sometimes hedge against this because like the internet is filled with the stupidest opinions, and certainly you can find all of them out there. But like, it's impossible to argue that he was worse in year 2 than year 1. I think where the quibbling comes in is like how much better did he get, and where do you see him going? And that's kind of what I want to talk about in the second segment. I want to use I'm going to bring in my past self, Michael from the past, to talk about where I kind of thought Scoot could be best and worst case scenario wise when I recorded his season preview back in September, and then talk about where he landed and what that suggests about where he is and where he can go. That's what we will do in the second segment. Join me there, won't ya? First, though, I want to tell you that today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Look, there's no NBA playoffs in Portland right now, but there are many sporting events. But if you were close to somewhere with an NBA playoff game, boy, is it fun to go check out the atmosphere of postseason basketball. Every bucket, every defensive stop, every moment is huge. It's electric in the building with Game Time. You can be part of it without the stress of last-minute ticket hunting. If you're here in Portland, you can go see soccer matches. We got the Thorns, we got the Timbers. Those are particularly fun. I've enjoyed many of Thorns games in my time. And Game Time can help you get to whatever sporting event you want to go to. They make it fast and easy to get tickets, even when demand is sky high. Prices actually go down as tip-off gets closer, or kickoff if you're watching grass sports, if you're watching a little footy. Last-minute deals can save you up to 60% on the Game Time app. Plus, when you're looking for deals, they got all-in pricing on the app, so that means there's no surprise fees at checkout. What you see when you're browsing is what you get when you click buy. You're not going to be surprised by a convenience fee. The convenience is already there for you, and it's showing up. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA. You got $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use that redeem code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, let's talk Scooter. And to do that, let's bring in my past self, because what I do each year, if you're a new listener to the program, welcome. I'm so happy to have you. If you're a long-time listener, you'll probably remember this, but for new listeners, each year I do season previews to run through every player on the roster and give best and worst case scenarios, and they're meant to be the polls, like it's best case scenario within reason and worst case scenario without injury. The idea is that players will fall in the middle, but sometimes I just straight up get it wrong. Sometimes players way underperform my expectations. Sometimes they way overperform my expectations. But I think it's an interesting exercise to think about. Here we are in April, and before any of the games were played back in September, where was I at as like a I don't want to say analyst because that seems a little too corny, but as like a yapper, where was I at as professional yapper boy? So I want to bring in Michael from the past and kind of discuss figure out where I was and talk about what that means for where Scoot is now and where he's going. All right, take it away, Michael from the past. What's the best case scenario for Scoot Henderson? It's that the shooting stabilizes, the finishing improves, the decision-making takes a leap, and the athleticism that you see from time to time becomes more functional and just more obvious in-game. We just didn't see much of that from Scoot. The true explosiveness. He looked small often when he played. And the best case scenario is he doesn't look small. He looks like the promised super athlete that we have seen. The best case scenario is that he shoots, he makes layups, and he looks explosive when he plays. And he does all of that while improving his decision-making. A big challenge for him all season long was decision-making. Not just with turnovers, and that was a big deal early, and it kind of continued throughout the whole season. Some of that will improve just by familiarity. But other times it was just like his sort of pass shoot calculation would get messy, and his feet would get a little out of order in the in-between game. So he's going to take a pull-up, and he's just totally off balance. The best case scenario is that all of that happens. The shooting, the finishing, the decision-making, the explosiveness. And when we get to the end of the season, Scoot Henderson is undoubtedly one of the top young players in the NBA. No caveats, no conditions, no okay, but if you take this chunk of games and throw out this chunk of games. The best case scenario for Scoot is that when you get to end of year 2, you've forgotten what year 1 looked like because you remember that this was a very high-level prospect coming into the draft, and he looks like it on an NBA court. The best case scenario is the Scoot Henderson we were promised arrives. What's the worst case scenario for Scoot Henderson? It looks similar to year one. The worst case scenario isn't really production for me. Sure, it'll look a lot like year one. Maybe, he still is like a 40% shooter from the field, and he's a below average shooter from three, right around 33%, and the turnovers don't get cleaned up, and he remains he still struggles to finish a little bit at the rim still, or a lot of bit like he did in his first season. That'll be there. But I think what actually is the worst case scenario is less about production and more about feel. In the way that the best case scenario is that Scoot removes all doubt. He's undoubtedly one of the best young players in the league. The worst case scenario is that not only does Scoot leave some doubt about belonging on those lists, the worst case scenario is that he leaves some doubt about what the franchise does next. Thank you, Michael from the past. So I think you'd be hard pressed to say there, based on my best case scenario, Scoot. I don't think Scoot hit that, right? I don't think he's unquestionably one of the best young players in the league. That's probably a little rich for what Scoot Henderson is right now. He's a promising young point guard for sure. There were moments when he looked really good. I think there were moments this year when you could make a strong case that he was the Blazers' best point guard, like a very compelling one. Sure, I wouldn't quibble with it. Maybe I'd quibble. I like quibbling, but I wouldn't. It would be. I think it's a reasonable position to hold at some points here and there this season that he was the best point guard on the roster. Certainly, probably not all the way through. But I don't think you could say that he hit the best case scenario because I don't think he's one of the best young players in the league without a doubt. I think that's too far. But I don't think he did the worst case scenario because he did indeed improve. His finishing at the rim improved from 46% in year one to 56% in year two. His three-point shooting jumped from 33% to 35%. He was, cut down on his turnovers. He was all of the things. He improved as a defender. All of the things you wanted to see him take strides, and he took strides. I don't think this was like, this sort of like large failure of Scoot Henderson in year two. And I don't think really the final point that Michael from the past made is like, I don't think there's this existential crisis about the future of Scoot. Like they have to move on. They've got to find a point guard because he's not the guy. The quibble, I've used the quibble too many times, but the concern is what level can Scoot be? There was a time this year when like I said, where I was like, is Scoot ever going to be like a positive NBA player? Is this dude going to ever be a positive pro? And now I feel pretty comfortable that he'll be a starter in the league. It's really bizarre to me that he played fewer minutes in year two than he did in year one overall. Like a lot of those minutes he soaks up by the end of the year when he was playing big minutes, but like he played 28 minutes a game as a rookie. He's the number 3 overall pick, and he played fewer minutes as the number 3 overall pick in year two on a team that wasn't like wholly different, right? They just like didn't carve out the space for him. They never like really let him, they had Avery Simons in front of him. They had Shaedon Sharpe in front of him. He was never that spot. Like I said, he started freaking 10 of his 66 games. It's bizarre, quite frankly. He started 42 games in 2 years. It's a little weird how his situation has been. Some of that is because Scoot hasn't been very good, right? Like he hasn't like earned it or grabbed the reins, and they tried to just hand it to him, and he couldn't hang early in year one, and they haven't just handed it to him since. But I don't think you could say that like the Blazers as an organization are like deeply worried about Scoot's future. So I don't think you could say he hit the worst case scenario. He landed pretty squarely in the middle. A player who improved, a player who looks like he has a starting point guard caliber in his future. But if you were looking for really high-level star upside, I don't think that has flashed necessarily. That doesn't mean that Scoot is this horrendous draft pick or anything like that. But it is true that when you draft a guy 3rd overall, you're hoping for that star trajectory, right? Like that's a top 5 picks. Obviously plenty of them don't pan out over the course of the history of the league. Like that is very common. It's hard to get stuff right in the draft. But like as a franchise, when you pick that high, you hope you get this star trajectory. The book isn't over on Scoot. Like it's not done. He's 21 years old. But he has not made the strides in his first 2 seasons to make you feel like yep, that's the dude. But he has made strides to avoid the sort of the B word, although I think bust was bandied about by some folks this season because people love to hate. But he's not that, and he's not quite like, yes, this is whatever, Chris Paul with more hair or something like that. It's not that, right? He's a couple rungs below the best of the young point guards, and he's someone who is getting better and is still very young. So the question isn't like, are the Blazers going to bail on him? The question is, are they going to commit to him? What do they do with him? What do they do with this whole thing? Let's talk about it, because his future and his role in year 3, I think, is crucial for what they need to do, what sort of the direction of the franchise on the whole. Let's talk about that to close the show. Join me in that third segment, won't you? Before we do that, though, I want to tell you that today's show is brought to you by the good folks over at Amazon Fire TV. Did you know that your Fire TV is also an Xbox? You can turn any TV into your gaming entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. Your Fire TV Stick 4K devices let you play video games without a console. You just grab a paired controller, subscribe, or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football to Call of Duty Black Ops and Avowed. And as easily as you stream your favorite shows, it's gaming made simple. It's all on your Fire TV. So you probably, if you have or are thinking about getting a Fire TV device, a Fire TV stick, you know that you can watch Netflix and Prime Video and Disney Plus and Max and all of those things, but you can also play high quality Xbox games at a fraction of the cost of any console. Or if you already have a console, you can just plug in your Fire TV stick downstairs, upstairs, in the other room, in the back room, at your friend's house. You can take it with you when you travel, so you have gaming on the go, or all the little gamers in your family have gaming on the go if that's something you're into. So head over to Amazon.com/FireTVLockedOn. That's Amazon.com/FireTVLockedOn to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices including Fire TV Stick 4K, Fire TV Stick 4K Max, and Fire TV Cube. Still a pass first point guard. I'm still Mike Richmond, and you're still listening to Locks on Blazers. I think the question with Scoot Henderson is, do the Blazers in year 3 continue to treat him as a backup point guard? I think you could say in the big picture that Scoot Henderson hasn't, like, quote unquote earned it, right? Like he hasn't earned it. Because he hasn't had like a 40-game stretch where it's like, yes, that dude is a high-level starter, go get it. And, he's, when they kind of, reduced his role slightly in January and said like, hey, you're going to play a little bit less unless you really defend. So Billups kind of leaned into like, hey, we're going to try to be competitive, and the way you're going to stay on the floor is defense. Like Scoot, while he did play a little bit less for a little while, not like dramatically less, but it's slightly reduced minutes in a bench role. It's like he probably improved on defense during that stretch. It was probably in the grand scheme relatively effective. But for me, here is where I land. If the Blazers go into year 3 of Scoot Henderson's career and he is the backup point guard on the roster on opening night, congratulations, you've drafted a backup. For the love of all that is Ruben Boomshay, whose plush doll is behind me on this wall somewhere up there, if you're watching on YouTube, start him. Commit to it. The lineup that Scoot Henderson played in the most frequently this year was my most intriguing lineup. Scoot Henderson, Shaedon Sharpe, Toumani Camara, Denny Avdia, and Donovan Clingan. It was the lineup at the beginning of the year that I said, this lineup's going to be this is my most intriguing lineup heading this season, the lineup I most want to see. It's the Blazers' future, right? Scoot, Shea, Denny, DC, a bunch of youngsters, dudes not yet celebrating their 26th birthday, although I believe Toumani is a May birthday. He'll be 26 at the start of next season, but like a bunch of youngsters this year who will still be young next year, and like a point guard, a shooting guard, 2 forwards, a center, like a group that makes sense together. particularly with the development of Denny as a shooter and a secondary playmaker, particularly the development of Tumani Kamara as a shooter, particularly with the development of Scoot Henderson as a shooter. It's like it was when I was pitching it in freaking August or whatever, it's like, well, this lineup can't score, but that's fine. Like, I'm still intrigued by it. But like, those guys improved enough that you feel like it could make sense together. They played in 74 minutes total across 19 games. It's 143 possessions according to Clean the Glass, and they got crushed in those minutes. NBA.com had him at minus 17.8 net rating, and Cleaning the Glass, that cuts out some of the garbage time, has them at a minus 13.7 net rating. They're outscored by 13.7 points per 100 possessions when they share the court. The offense is particularly troubling. But you sub in DeAndre Ayton or Duop Reith for Donovan Clingan in those spots, and the minutes were positive. So some of the Blazers' question is, how does Scoot work? Clearly, with a center as offensively limited as Clingan, that could be a problem with Scoot as a pick and roll guy. But putting Scoot with a pick and roll partner that can shoot Duop Reith or shoot mid-range jumpers and roll a little bit, DeAndre Ayton, you're getting something that works, even if these are relatively small possessions as to be largely meaningless. I do think in general it kind of meets the eye test, is that Scoot and Clingan is not a particularly good pick and roll pairing, although I would say the numbers I shared with you, while dramatic, are probably not telling in terms of predictiveness. They are, if nothing else, what happened this season. The lineup he played in the most is the lineup I wanted to see him play in the most, and it wasn't very good. I mentioned earlier in the show that I think you could make the case that there were times this year that Scoot Henderson was better than Anthony Simons. I probably would not, I personally would not say that Scoot Henderson is better than Anthony Simons. I think that's a bridge too far. Like, I just do. There are people who are on the internet who are pretty loudly anti-Anthony Simons, and I will let those people cook. Comment away, as you are wont to do, all of you people on the internet. But like, I'm not making that case. That's not really my logic. My logic in the past for trading Anthony Simons was, it doesn't matter if Scoot Henderson is no good. It's time to it was time to move on from Ant last year. I'm basically still banging that drum. The difference is that now the gap between Ant and Scoot is much, much narrower. The Blazers probably can't, for like political reasons. It's just hard to be like, okay, Ant, now you're a bench guy, right? Like, it's just, he's 26 and they gave him a $100 million contract, and like, it's just it's for like obviously team dynamic reasons. Because Scoot hasn't like grabbed the reins, a player that's a little worse than you starting over you, it's just like, it's not going to work, right? It's not a like a tenable, realistic situation for where the roster is at. Would it make some sense? Yeah, I think so, right? Like, but it doesn't really solve anything, because if Anthony Simon's still going to play at the end, you still have at the end of the game, you still have this like point guard thing. This is kind of like, and if you trade for other guards, you can solve this a little bit. But like, I think they need to. I was in favor of them doing this a year ago, and I remain in favor of them doing it now. And not because I have this wholehearted belief that Scoot Henderson is the truth and a future all-star and Baron Davis reincarnate. Because when you draft someone third overall and they improve in their second season after a pretty rough first season, and then you don't commit to them, congratulations, you drafted a backup. Congrats. The Blazers are just simply not in a place where it makes sense to do anything other than to commit to what they've done. I'm not 100% sure Scoot is going to shine in that role. I'm not 100% sure Scoot is the point guard for the Blazers for the next decade or whatever. But I am very certain that it is time to stop messing around and go ahead and find out. Scoot Henderson, if he plays, another 65 games next year, needs to start about 60 of them, if not all 65. It's time. There are statistical indicators to say that he helps the offense more than any other player on the team. He had the best on-off offensive impact of anyone on the team, according to Cleaning the Glass. There are some just eyeball stuff that suggests that his ability to keep his dribble alive and get guys involved and make simple passes helps sort of juice the offense. And there are moments where Scoot improved enough that you could say, yeah, that's kind of a guy he's going to be. He had some down moments, to be sure. But it's time to commit to him, for the love of Gorsh. Shout out to my main man, Goofy. Just do it. Just do it. And if it fails, it fails. This is the path you chose, except they haven't chosen it yet. It's not that simple. Like, you don't get to just like wave your magic wand, Anfernee Simons off the team. But if you are interested in him being on another roster, it is possible. And you're allowed to trade for shooting. You're allowed to trade for other guards. Like, I'm not saying like destroy the depth. You can address some needs in an Anfernee Simons trade and allow a player to come in that would be more comfortable coming off the bench, that doesn't have the like long-term history with the team and the financial commitment and all of those things that does make the sort of soft, personal, interpersonal, and social stuff make it more challenging. You can commit to the roster and upgrade it and figure out if this works because you drafted this dude 3rd overall. And if Scoot's a star, you freaking nailed it. And if Scoot's not a star, if he is merely like a starting point guard or proves to be less than that, you find it out by giving him the minutes. It's not like his overall development was like greatly inhibited by playing just shy of 27 minutes a night this year. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is it's time to give Scoot 32 minutes a night a game and the starting Keys as your starting point guard, Keys as your finishing point guard, because the next version of the Blazers, if they are good with Scoot, you need to find it out in year 3. And if they're not going to be good with Scoot, you need to find it out in year 3. And bringing him off the bench slowly to chase a 43rd win next season or whatever just simply doesn't make any sense. Commit to it. It's time to let Scoot go. Best, worst, or whatever. Let him have the keys. And if he crashes the truck, might have to start shopping for a new truck. But if he's able to keep this thing on the road, at least you let him drive, because nobody learns in the passenger seat. That is going to do it for today's program. Come back for tomorrow's show. 5 days a week, wherever you get podcasts, and also on YouTube. I appreciate you listening. I'll talk to you soon.